If someone is treating you badly, you don't have to stay to prove that you love them, because that's not love, that's survival.
Welcome to More Than an Inmate's Girlfriend. I'm your host, Jay. And I want to start this week off by saying about this episode, I think everyone's been in a toxic relationship before. And I think there's a lot of people that are still in toxic relationships. And I think a lot of times people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to mention the toxicity because they're embarrassed. This is one of the most insightful episodes for anybody who is currently going through it. Sheena has opened up and been so vulnerable through this whole process. And I think it's really funny because when we first did the initial call, we weren't even sure what we were going to talk about. And oftentimes, you guys have noticed that every episode kind of has a theme, and we try not to repeat the themes so that every week we get something new. But we don't always know what the person has in their story that's unique. So when Sheena reached out, we knew some stuff about her, but we weren't really sure where we were going to take the episode. And she wasn't sure either. So the initial call that we had was really around, what are we going to talk about? So basically we ask, what's your story? And as she was telling the story, her story was one that I find you don't necessarily see that often, where her journey of healing ended up with them together in a very healthy relationship when it was very toxic to start. And I think that that's very rare. And her insights on how it unfolded are invaluable. And I think people like Sheena oftentimes try and give advice to others because they've actually been through it, and people don't recognize because they only see the end. It's like when you see the meme of the iceberg or whatever, and it says like all the work it took to get to success, and under the water of the iceberg, you see like how deep the iceberg actually goes, but people only see the surface. So oftentimes when you just see the healthy relationship, you don't see all the work that it took to get there. Like Nick and I is a great example, I think, too, because we did a lot of work individually without even knowing each other before we met. And now this relationship that we have is really great. And I think people think that it's not real, that it's fake or whatever, but actually it's really not. And we really did a lot of work, and we really do and are in this very healthy place. Sheena is another example, but it was a different route that she took, where she started with him since they were very, very young, and it was very, very toxic, and then they got to this point. So this episode's a little bit longer because she has to put in the story for the audience to understand just how bad it was and what it took to get where they are today. So I think this episode is really one of those episodes where anybody who's in a relationship where they're not feeling fulfilled and they're not feeling like they're getting what they need or that it is toxic, this is the route that she took, and this is how it ended up, and this is the commitments that she made to herself to get there. And it's often a conversation that a lot of people that are in tougher situations don't want to have because they don't want to feel judged and they feel ashamed. And although like AJ and I try and create this safe space, we're really just creating this safe space for you guys to listen to it. We're not getting the feedback back. So I hope this episode is really helpful for people who might be in those types of situations and are scared to talk about it, because you're not alone. And a lot of people go through it and have gone through similar circumstances. And the way that Sheena is able to portray it is comforting. Trigger warning, tears are going to flow at the end. I feel like the last 20 minutes are just like so full of information. But this is Sheena's story, and I hope you guys get out of it what I got out of it. And before I go, as usual, please hit that follow button if you haven't hit it yet. Please, if you like the show, please support us by hitting the follow button. That's all we ask. It is completely free. And you can follow us on social media at More Than an Inmate's GF on TikTok and at podcast_prisongf on Instagram. DMs are always open. If you want to chat, if you want to be a guest, please feel free to reach out. We love communicating with you guys and getting to know you better. And with that, that's it. Enjoy the episode, and I hope you enjoy learning all about Sheena and Joe. Bye. welcome Sheena. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
I cannot wait to get into the story and hear all about you and Joe. Can you talk to me about how you first met him?
Yes, I was living in California and I just graduated high school. I was a supervisor at a Quiznos. And at that time, I was living on my own. My mom lived in Hawaii, my dad lived in Arizona, and I was just pretty much on my own. But anyway, we were short-staffed at my restaurant, and we had to call over some people from the other restaurant, which one of them happened to be Joe. And so that's how we met. He came in to help at the restaurant. I was his boss, and that was it. We instantly had a strong chemistry. I like to say it was like a silent, dark, eerie, quiet chemistry, but there was definitely chemistry. We didn't talk that much. We just went off of each other's energy. We did a lot of hotel partying and nighttime desert partying. And I was just really intrigued with him because outside of my vanilla relationship that I had in high school, Joe had that fun bad boy vibe that I was super intrigued by.
I can understand why. I think most of us are.
Yeah.
So then what happened that you guys lost touch?
Along that time with some of the people he knew, one of them had gotten shot in front of a store and became paralyzed from the waist down. And that was pretty detrimental at that time. The fun stopped. And I did go with Joe to the hospital to see his friend. And it was pretty traumatizing seeing him there in the hospital. He wasn't able to move. And I tried to be supportive with Joe at that time, but I was 18. I didn't know how to handle that situation, being in a lifestyle he was in. I don't know what happened aside from this, but I don't know if he wanted to seek revenge or what was going on, but he just disappeared. He didn't show back up to work. He was gone. Wow. I did have a few phone numbers that I knew were like his aunts and family members' phone numbers, but I didn't really know them. So I did call a couple times, pretending to just be like a sporadic person, but they would always just be like, oh no, he's not here. I didn't push because no one really knew me. I just took it as he's gone, cut my losses. This was too much for him. I'm not going to see him again. Like that was it.
How did you feel about it? Were you completely heartbroken?
I was sad, but I wouldn't say heartbroken because our dynamic wasn't like we talked in like relationship wise. Okay. It was very intense, but we never had those kind of conversations like, oh, what are we? I was sad that I didn't have that excitement with me anymore, but more importantly, I was really sad that his life might get messed up.
But that would not be the last.
No, it wasn't the last time I saw Joe. And how many times can I say that in my lifetime? Because I did re-see Joe numerous times in my life. It reminds me of a song by Jessie Reyes. And she says, I guess Buddha's got it right. We reincarnate every time. And those lyrics always get to me because that reminds me of me and Joe. We reincarnate every time. Yeah. So I was living in a trap house. I was supposed to be moving into a 2-bedroom apartment with a friend who had 2 young boys. And we were taking over an apartment that her uncles and father were to be evicted from. And uncles left. Father was never put on the eviction notice. I was on the lease to pay half the rent, sleeping on the couch. And in that moment in time, I met my now son's father, who happened to be a dealer at that house. Mind you, to make it clear, I had never been involved with using drugs or doing drugs. I just happened to be in survival mode within that lifestyle, and that's where I was at. My mother wanted me back home in Hawaii, but I didn't get along with my stepdad at the time, and I would have rather lived where I was living than put up with him. It was the end of the summer, going into fall, and I want to say about 2 months after me and him got together, I became pregnant. And at Quiznos working, and I think I was about 6 weeks pregnant maybe, out of nowhere, up pops Joe with one of our mutual friends with a dozen of roses.
Oh my gosh.
And I was shocked, like jaw to the floor, like was reincarnated. He just showed up into the shop and I said hi. He said hi. I said, what are you doing here? And he was like, I came back here to see you. And I just looked at him and I think he knew the look in my face, like, why isn't she so excited?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm pregnant. And he looked at me shocked and I said, I'm with somebody else. I'm pregnant with someone else. And he just said, like, wow, he wasn't upset and he wasn't mad. I think it was just the initial shock and kind of like sadness, like
Mm-hmm.
I was gone too long.
Mm-hmm.
Like I let this one get away kind of thing. And truth be told, I was young and I didn't make the best decisions at the time, but I had fallen for my son's dad and I did want to have a baby. And the mentality I was in at the time was that was my way of believing that's what love was. Like, let me have your baby. Like the
Mm-hmm.
typical thing you see in a movie, like, oh, let me have your baby. Because I did want my son. So that was not a mistake. But
Right.
the timing of it all was bad at the moment.
I love this story. Keep going.
So I told him I was sorry, but I wasn't sorry I was pregnant. I was just sorry that it happened this way. And at the time he was leaving, my son's dad was coming in and he asked me who that was. And they were kind of enemies. So it wasn't the best situation for me to be talking to Joe anymore at that time. So that's where that left off.
Yeah. I really want to spend a little bit of time talking about how you were living in a trap house. This was not the way you envisioned your life to be. How are you
Okay.
feeling in that time? I feel like it's a
Yeah.
lot for someone who's not affiliated with gangs typically, not affiliated with drugs typically. Like you're quote unquote good girl, and then you're kind of thrown in with these men and these situations. What
Yeah.
were you feeling?
I was 18 and independent. When I look back at it now, I was a baby. I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
My mindset at the time was, I was partying, I was drinking here and there. In my head, I was grown, right? I was
Mm.
independent. But overall, even though I enjoyed my freedom, being around the people I was around, it was extremely demeaning. And what I mean by that is I was around 50-year-old men that were literally holding crack and meth pipes up to my mouth, telling me to take the hit and I would get the best high that I ever felt in my life.
Oh my
And my mindset was, I don't want to look like you.
God.
Like, I'm not doing that. And I had a mouth. I'm my father's daughter. I'm Native American and Italian. And I said, I'm not going to look like you. And I was around in that house men that were tossing their disabled girlfriends around the house, like physically tossing
Oh my.
and around a lot of abusive men. And I naturally had became a fighter. I never was one to become very submissive to those situations. I was one that was always on defense and ready to protect myself and protected women. So I hated in that situation. Although I had the freedom to leave and do what I wanted, it was very demeaning as a girl, as a woman, to live in a situation like that. Although it was traumatizing,
Yeah.
cops were called, guns were pulled, searches were done. I wasn't related to any of these people. When the police came and they looked at me in this house, they never questioned why I was there. They never questioned what I was doing there. They just checked my people to see if I was high, and I wasn't.
Oh.
And it's sad. Like nobody thought to think like, why is this girl here? But being in those situations and having to face those struggles, it made me so much more stronger. It made me want to overcome.
Yeah. So, obviously, at some point, you left this trap house, you left this situation. At what point were you like, I gotta get out of this?
Yeah, I got tired of sleeping on the couch. My
Mm-hmm.
son's dad was working, and we ended up getting a car from his sister. And I do remember at that time we were sleeping in the car quite a bit, and it was cold. It was November, and we were so tiny. It was an old car that had the seats that go straight across the front, so it felt like we were snuggling in a bed together.
Mm-hmm.
But I was paying half the rent and sleeping on the couch, and the cops were being called, and her dad was beating on his girlfriend. And I wasn't exposed before this to drug addiction. I was around alcoholism, but then seeing the crazy stuff that was happening, like the picking of the scalp and the scabs and the paraphernalia, I was so naive that at the time my son's dad was also addicted to meth. And when I had seen the police officers come to the house and do a search, and I saw all the glass pipes, I thought they were weed pipes. I had no idea. And so when my son's dad came home from work when they were doing the search, and I said, hey, there's a meth pipe.
Oh my God.
So that's how naive I was to the situation until I started learning real quick on my own.
Oh.
And so we took off and we were homeless. But then I ended up getting us a little 2-bedroom apartment when I was pregnant.
Oh.
And I mean, I can go on and on about all the things that happened there, but it was very toxic. There was drug sales going on. Mind you, I was pregnant. I wanted peace. I wanted quiet. And that was dad's only way of making money at the time. So a lot of that was going on. And shortly after my son was born, I moved back to Hawaii. And then I came back when my son was 3 months old, and we got another apartment, which continued with drug sales and seeing people in trench coats and sunglasses and finding hidden weapons in my apartment that I had no idea were there, and experiencing that kind of lifestyle, living from hotel to hotel that he supplied for me and our baby because he was dealing and supplying in another room. It was just a whole mess. I was 19 to 20. And I was under the belief that he was just doing this quickly so that he can get us an apartment. Well, it never turned out like that, right? It was the continued drug use and the continued selling and the continued drug use. And I again went back to live with my mom in Hawaii, and he got arrested. 2004, got out, 2006. And then we started a life together in California, and he did stay sober for a while until he relapsed again.
Yeah, it happens.
And I think all of that abuse and the drug use and instability, I was craving the stability and having a family together, and I had goals. I wanted to buy a home. The constant failing and the instability and the abuse is what led me to just let it go.
So, Joe.
2011, I had broken up with my son's dad, and all these years, I always wondered what happened to Joe. He's always in the back of my mind, but I'm very faithful. I wasn't going to go reaching out for anybody while I'm in a relationship, but you wonder, 2011, I looked on Facebook and I just typed his name. I never forgot his name, his last name especially. And I typed him up, and there he was. He answered me. He was in a relationship. We caught up a little bit, and that was really it, because he lived with his kids' mom, and I was moving to Hawaii. But California was always my home. Fast forward October 2015, I was like, I wonder how Joe's doing. So I sent him a message, and he didn't respond. I said, okay, maybe he doesn't use social media. Nothing else really came to mind. I was just doing my own thing, going out with friends and stuff. And then the night before Easter in 2016, March 27th, a response from Joe on Facebook Messenger. And I was like, holy shit. And then he said, where are you? Because the last he knew, I was moving to Hawaii. And I said, I'm in Palm Springs. And he's like, what? Where do you live? And I said, La Quinta. He said, I live in La Quinta too. I said, are you single now? He said, yes. Are you single now? And I was like, yes. And he said, I'm staying with my brother in La Quinta. If you want to come catch up, feel free. And I said, I'm on my way. I got to see you. And so he was like, okay. And thank God I went out that night because I was looking cute.
Yeah.
I had a couple lawn chairs in the back of my trunk. I pulled up to the parking lot at his brother's apartment, pulled out the lawn chairs. And he had long hair. And the last I had seen him, he was bald. So that was kind of shocking.
Oh my God.
And yeah, we sat and talked all night, and we caught up. And he did tell me that he had just gotten released from being incarcerated. And so I was like, okay, interesting. But he was healthy and everything seemed good at the time. And we said our goodbyes because it was Easter the next day, and he was planning to surprise his kids because they didn't know that he had just been released. So that's how we got back into touch.
And then you guys got into a relationship.
Yeah, so it was very intense head on. I did not take the time to take it slow. We've seen each other every single day since then. He started spending the night with me at my house and very quickly moved in. And his mom wasn't too happy at the time. And now we call each other a blended family. But at the time, she was scared. She thought I was trying to help him take his kids away. And so I was helping him get visitation, joint custody. She was very skeptical. And so things were great when it was great. But then he himself had relapsed on methamphetamine. And the dynamic of our relationship was, he was my best friend. I couldn't have any better memories with anybody else but him. We had great family vacations. We did Thanksgiving weekends up in Idlewild. He was very active with the kids. But when it was bad, he would go into psychosis. He would go into paranoia. It was a mixture of him trying to stay sober and then he would relapse, and then him trying to prove himself that he was going to stay sober, but then he would falter really quickly because the wrong people would come around. And then even through that, we did get married in Vegas, February 27, 2017. It was a constant, like, trying to prove each other our love. It was just toxic. It wasn't anything that was healthy. Anytime he was sober, it was great. Barbecues, pool days, beach days. He was a crucial advocate to my son during a very intensive time in my son's life. Joe was there for my son. And so those things that he provided was what always jaded me from the toxicity that was happening when he would relapse. I knew Joe when he was sober, and when under the influence, Joe was not the same person. And I know this doesn't excuse anything, but one thing I could say that I can't say for many fathers is that even when Joe was at his worst and I didn't allow him around us, it was his weekend to see his children. He was on the bus, catching the bus to his kids' apartment and just asking, can I just hang out with them at the park? Like right there at the park, on the premises of the apartment. Even at his worst time, heat exhaustion, heat rashes, limping from being dehydrated, he still managed to find a way to get to his kids to spend that time with him. Wow. It might not have been the way that they wanted to see him, but he showed up when he would say that he would show up.
Wow. That's so sad. You must have been so heartbroken.
And that was what kept my heart, because I knew Joe. It makes me emotional now because when you think about it, he was so broken inside. But when people hear that, know who Joe really is, they can't imagine him like that. And then the people that have seen him like that, and they can't understand, like, why would you go back to somebody like that? They would feel like he looks like a dead Jesus because his hair would be so long and he'd be so skinny. And I was like, because you don't know his soul, you know?
So you stuck around even though it was toxic and hot and cold? Yes
and no. Yes and no. I never knew when Joe was going to relapse. I always knew after he relapsed because he was really good at hiding it. So I never knew what the signs were like, oh, he's about to relapse, you know? And part of that is because I was in my own emotional distress with life. I was going to school for substance abuse counseling, so I did know the signs of when he did relapse and how not to enable.
Okay.
I stuck around, but I got very hard and I got very stern with him. If he was under the influence, he was not allowed into the home. He would beg and cry for water, a shower, and my response was always the same. You can have a shower when you go to treatment.
Wow.
You can have a drink of Gatorade when you go to treatment. I will talk to you when you're ready to go to treatment. If he would call, let me just talk to you. Okay, are you ready to go to treatment? Wait, please just hear me first. Not until you tell me you're ready to go to treatment. And I was very stern with not enabling him. And when you're ready to go to treatment, I will give you the tools to get there, but you have to do it yourself.
Was it schooling that taught you that? What to do?
It was schooling, and it was my own experiences with my son's dad, because I didn't want to live a life of addiction. But I remembered everything that I did do trying to get my ex into treatment and just going with the flow. I wasn't stern enough with him. And I learned that loving somebody doesn't mean carrying them the whole way, because you're stealing from them the opportunity to rehabilitate. You're taking that opportunity for them to gain strength away from them. You're keeping them weak by holding their hand too much. Yeah. That was my thought process. I really loved Joe. I still love Joe, but at the time I really believed that I loved him. And the only way to save him was to let him tire himself out, to allow him to fall and gain those experiences himself. I knew that I couldn't take that away from him. If I did any form of enabling, it would prolong his addiction. So the decision to keep him out, that part wasn't hard. It was the waiting, the anticipation, the missing him, the wanting him healed, wanting him there for our newborn baby. That was the part that was hard. But I knew that I wouldn't get that stuff if I didn't let him go, if I didn't make him fall on his own footsteps, right?
You still loved him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my heart was there at that time. Yeah, of course. And he cracked. He did crack. He said, okay, I'm ready. Wow. And I said, okay, you can come in. Here's the phone numbers. Make the phone call your insurance, tell them that you want a screening and tell them where you want to go. And From my understanding, they will send you an Uber and they will take you to San Bernardino, but you have to wait 2 days. And those 2 days, you're going to take as many Benadryls as I tell you to take. That's going to keep you asleep and comfortable.
Yeah.
And he did it. He did do it. He did do it. Wow. He didn't stay sober the whole time, but he did do it, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of the recovery. You're trying, you're putting in the effort, and unfortunately, he faltered shortly after that.
And what led you to get to Washington?
So it got bad when he relapsed again. The psychosis got bad, and our baby was just a newborn, and bills were stacking up. I couldn't work. I had my son, who was 14, to help me with the newborn baby, which wasn't fair to him. I got tired and I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't have family I could depend on in California. My mom had just moved to Washington. So I called my family and I said, okay, I'm done. Can I come? And they welcomed me with open arms. Mm-hmm. And I told Joe, I'm leaving to Washington. I can't do it anymore. I can't be here. I can't help you. And Joe said, not without me. And I was stunned because people that are from the desert, they don't leave the desert. And he was like, I'm coming with. And we sold a bunch of our furniture, packed our stuff up. He went through withdrawals, driving up to Washington for 2 to 3 days, and he moved up there with me.
And did he get sober?
Yeah, he stayed sober for about 8 months or so. I was enrolled in school there. I really wanted to get my associates. And what I didn't know then that I knew now, he was going through an extreme, mental difficulty where, I can't really decipher everything that happened, but he was going through a breakdown internally. And it was putting a huge wedge between us. I was trying to finish school and he was battling what I didn't understand, and he didn't know how to express, and he didn't talk. He shut down. He wasn't talking to me. He wasn't being supportive when I was going to school. He would just stand outside and look at me like I'm done. And he was blanked out. And I learned later from people, when I explained what was going on, they called it pause. And they said it sounds exactly like what he was going through. He probably should have had a sponsor. He probably should have been going to meetings or seen a counselor. I did what I knew best, which was to start fights to protect myself. He's shutting down on me. So my thought process at the time was to start the fights, right? You can't be supportive, or you'll never be supportive. I thought I could trust you, those kind of fights, And I pushed him away and I kicked him out, and he went right back to California. And he did put himself in HVAC school. He moved in with his mom, but it wasn't very long after that he relapsed. And he did reach out here and there, but our fight was pretty intense. And so I ignored him.
Were you angry? Or had you given up?
I was angry. And I was hurt, but I always at the time knew how to numb myself out. I was angry because he didn't fight. When I kicked him out and I told him to leave, he just sat there okay. Which was odd because that wasn't his demeanor. His demeanor was always, don't give up on me. And I don't know if he just felt out of place being up here at the time, because he loves it up here. So at that moment in that time, I really think it had to do with just his brain healing from not being on drugs and just whatever other mental issues he was going through.
Did you give up?
No. So after about a year, I remember I just had this crazy intuition that something was wrong. And it was around Christmas. And I called my friend and I said, I need to find Joe. And she was like, what? And I said, something's wrong. I feel it. I feel it so intensely in my chest. There's something wrong. And she said, what time are we leaving? Let's go.
Oh my gosh.
And when are we going? Are we driving out of California? And I was like, you would do that with me? She was like, yeah, girl, I got you. Let's go. And I said, wait, let me call his kid's mom and see. So I sent her a message. I said, hey, have you seen Joe? And she said, yeah, he sees the kids still every other weekend, which was shocking, but not shocking. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, can you tell him to get a hold of me? He was hurt because I had cut him off.
Yeah.
And he was like, what is it? And I said, I know you're not okay. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, I know you're not okay. I want you to come back. And he was like, what? And I said, we could fix this. I want you to come back. We could fix this. I don't want you down there. You relapsed, didn't you? You're using, aren't you? And he never said no, but he was just quiet, which means yes.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And so we briefly started to discuss. He said, I'm going to this HVAC school. I said, okay, get sober, finish school, come back up here. We could do this. And he was like, we'll talk about it. It wasn't anything like, okay, let's go, I'm moving back. It was like, okay, we'll talk about it. I think it was like a week or two after when I got the phone call from the jail. I hadn't heard from him in a few days, and then I got the call from him. He was in jail. And initially, I thought he just did something stupid. Maybe he crashed a car. I don't know. What did you do? And he was like, it's not good. He didn't really remember everything that he did because he was under the influence. But he told me that he was visiting his kids and he ran out of gas. And because he was prideful and he didn't panhandle or beg for money or ask for money, he caught the charge that he did, which was hijacking. So he robbed a Subway, asked the girl for the car, promised her he'd bring the car back because he just needed to use her car to get gas for his car, and promised her he'd bring it back and told her where he was going to park it, which he did.
I think that's so telling of what kind of character he is. Instead of robbing the actual store to get money or stealing the car that already had gas, he was just like, this is the bare minimum of what I can do to get what I need. And for someone who's in that kind of mindset and addicted to drugs, I could see how he would think it's logical. Like, it's okay because I'm taking bare minimum. I'm going to give it back to her.
Yeah.
I just think it's almost comical.
Yeah. And it's not excusable, but it's almost like he did what he said he was going to do. In the paperwork, she said that he was actually really nice during the process. But being nice doesn't excuse your charge. So
at all.
And he had a pocket knife with him, so then he got a weapon enhancement too. And he had a prior strike from 2005. So with this charge, he ended up getting a second strike with 11 years with 66% of that time.
And you ended up bailing him out.
I did.
Why did you do that?
So he got arrested, was it January 2020? And it was April. I think he was in there for a few months, and it was during the pandemic. It was a very weird time. And I had opened my own Facebook group page, and I was noticing that a lot was going on in the jail cells when it came to the pandemic, and they were being pretty negligent. A couple of COs, I think, died in the jail taking care of the inmates from COVID. Inmates were dying. There was some lawsuits going on the cleanliness. So that was that concern. But the other concern also was that we both knew it was his second strike, and we knew that he could possibly be doing some extensive time. They were talking like 30 years.
Whoa.
And so that was pretty heartbreaking. And the first thing that came to my mind were the kids. Yeah. I wanted my daughter to be able to spend time with her dad. She had just turned 2. Yeah. And I wanted him to be able to have time with his other kids too. And his kids were my stepkids. I loved them. I wanted them to be able to spend time with their dad. And not only that, knowing that he could possibly be gone for so long, I really wanted to make good memories with him and the kids and take pictures. And if the kids weren't going to see their dad for a long time, I wanted them to at least have these good memories with him, not just that he relapsed and went to prison and they never seen him again. And so I contacted bail hotline, and they were willing to work with me, and they were actually willing to allow him to go on bail with an ankle monitor and live up here in Washington while he was on bail.
Were you scared?
Yes and no. I was scared to bail him out because I had bailed out my son's dad when I was pregnant at 18, and I was stuck for many years with $27,000 on my credit. But at the same time, I knew Joe stayed sober in Washington, and I wasn't afraid of him running. I wasn't afraid of anything like that. I knew that his kids were important, and when Joe was in Washington, he was always on the right path. And so I had mixed feelings. I did have mixed feelings. I was nervous and scared, but I did trust that he was going to be okay once he got up here. So yeah, that was my decision. That was my choice. I wanted to spend time with him.
And how much time did you have when you were up there, when he was up there?
So he was on bail for about 21 months, so almost 2 years. And after going to California back and forth for court dates, he was told that he could stay for one more Christmas and that he was to go in. While he was here, I would say about the first 2/3 of it was good. I mean, we argued like any couple would, But we did a lot of stuff. 4th of July on the water. We went camping, Easter, all the things that we could do. His ex would allow the kids to come up here for the holidays to spend time with their dad. We would go down and pick them up. They would come here. He would fly down there and bring them back. But I want to say it was maybe about 6 months before he left, knowing that his time was coming up, is when things started to get really rocky. He started losing hope. He had a really good public defender to start. Then he was given one that was retiring and hardly talked to us at all, which led us to a third one that had just graduated law school and threw everything the first one had worked for out the window and said it wouldn't work. And so he started crashing out and making some slightly stupid decisions, getting attention from girls. And I was going to UW for my criminal justice degree, and instead of supporting each other, we just started attacking each other again.
That must have been hard right before he goes to prison.
Yeah, I want to say it was like a pre-mourning, like a preparation to mourn, knowing that everything was about to fall apart. The honeymoon phase of him being on bail, the reality was starting to click in, and we both got the case of the buckets.
Looking back, comparing your relationship to like when you were younger and when it was like really toxic and stuff, now you're older, had you evolved at all at this point, or was it still old habits, going back to the same toxicity?
I think at that point, we evolved as slightly in the sense that we took the time and energy to do things, create memories. We appreciated our time a little bit more during that time. But when it came to struggles and disagreements, the toxicity was still there and the patterns were still there. We didn't know how to handle them correctly at that time. We instantly would go back to our defensiveness, the blame game. This is happening because you did this, and there's no accountability on both ends at all.
Right.
It was, I'm right, you're wrong, we're both right, we're both wrong. And it was the same old survival tactics that we had.
Right.
Anything we could do to claw our way out of the situation that we were in emotionally, even if it meant hurting each other. Yeah. Those were the same old habits that we had.
I think a lot of people can relate to that, because as you're saying it, I can even relate to that in previous relationships, that I'm right, you're wrong. And
in the way that we handled the situation we were in, we were definitely still in old habits, totally emotionally.
Do you remember watching him leave for prison?
Yeah.
How was that?
Sorry, just thinking about everything gets me emotional, especially that specific topic. So we did plan a family party. We rented an Airbnb. Things were slowly but intensely getting toxic again. So I wanted it to be over. I wouldn't say like our relationship. I just wanted the whole scenario to be over. Okay. I felt like I was in a bad dream. But at the same time, we wanted to celebrate him, right? And we all partied. We had a good time. We drank a lot. He got to watch his Raiders win. And then the date came. He wore a suit, and we all stood outside of the courtroom, and they weren't letting people in the courthouse yet in general, unless you were there for an appointment or a court hearing. We had to pretty much wait and say our goodbye outside of the courtroom. So, I remember that. I remember that very clearly. It was extremely heart-wrenching. It was a very wide mix of emotions. I was in so much pain, but I was also numb to it. Like, I don't know if people have ever experienced pain so much that you can't feel the pain. That was it. It was, how do you mourn somebody that you're going to watch walk away that's alive? It's like mourning a death of somebody who's alive. My family was falling apart again, and I didn't have any control over that. So it wasn't like when someone gets arrested and they're there and then you have to go to the court hearings or see what's going to happen next. Like, we had all that time together, and then I had to just let him go, and I had no control over the situation.
Yeah. And then you have to be strong for your kids.
I had to be tough because I was the one that was always tough for everyone. I handled everything. But the only way that I knew how to handle it was to pretty much shut off the emotion. Yeah. I was angry at the system. I was angry at Joe for the way that we had spent the last 6 months. And I think I held on to that emotion because it was easier for me to feel that than to feel the sadness. So I didn't allow myself to feel like I was mourning deep inside, but I suppressed it. And I didn't allow myself to feel the sadness. I just was like, I'm mad at him. Yeah. This is easier. I'm just going to stay mad at him. Go on, go, bye.
Wow. Yeah.
But It was extremely hard. I look back at the pictures and I see all of our faces with just nothing but tears, and our faces are swollen from crying. It was probably one
Uh,
of the worst times of my life. Yeah.
and had you guys talked about what your relationship was going to look like while he was incarcerated?
We didn't have a conversation about what it was going to look like. I think we both knew that it was so rocky and it was like whatever happens, happens.
Okay.
I knew that when Joe was leaving, that I was going to have to go through my own healing process. I knew right before he was leaving. I knew when he was leaving because I was just numb, right?
Right.
The trauma and the loss was just too much for me to take again. And I wanted to disassociate myself from him and be free from all the stress. But I also was holding on to the weight of neglecting him, letting him go and not being there for him, right? And having to give him that pain of my decisions that I was going to make. I ended up making the decision to divorce him March after he left, so 2 months later.
Wow.
Our relationship was based off of so much hurt and trauma, not just from things that we put each other through, but our own childhood trauma and the way that we carried ourselves and the way that we lashed out on each other through that. I was like, I need a reset. I need to start over. He's gone. This is the end. But I wasn't cutting him off. I just need to take a step back and think about myself.
And how did he take it?
Well, I had written him a really long letter, and he said he felt like it was coming. And I felt really horrible because I felt like I was being that typical, oh, your man's gone, now you're going to go be single, life after lockup. But that wasn't my intentions. I didn't sign up to be with an inmate, and he knew that. When we got together, my intentions were to build a life with someone and to succeed together, right? Yeah. And people can say, oh, when you get married, it's through thick and thin, but where was my support through my thin, right? So it was time for me to take care of myself. It wasn't reciprocated. I can't continue to do a thick and thin if my needs weren't being met either.
Yeah.
I don't think he really took it seriously at the same time. Okay. Oh, this is just another kind of argument that we're having, or just a little emotional thing going through, and then we'll talk tomorrow. You know?
Just a little roller coaster.
But no, I was serious, and I was extremely overweight. I was the heaviest I ever was in my life. I was drinking a lot. So I got into the gym. I continued to finish my degree. I stayed friends with Joe, but I had to continuously remind him that we were not married anymore and that my life was my private business unless it pertained to our daughter. The choices that I made were probably not the best choices, but I had to experience that. And I don't regret it because that was part of my healing journey. Yeah. It also opened my eyes to my self-worth, but it also opened my eyes to realize that there wasn't any better connection that I had than what I still had with Joe. Wow. He was my family, right? Nothing felt natural with people. I couldn't joke the same. Nobody got what I was saying. But it was just awkward.
You make this decision to get divorced and to choose yourself for the first time. Did you ever feel that pull to go back to old habits?
So it wasn't that hard to not go back with Joe, particularly because when I set my mind to something, I stick to it, right? Oh, okay. I wanted to be free of that. Yeah. So I was very self-aware of the things that I was deciding to do and the type of people or the type of hanging out or whatever these people wanted to do.
Yeah. Up until this point, did you think it was only him, that he was the problem and not you?
At that time, yes. He was 100% the only problem.
Okay.
Because he's addicted to drugs. And this is just me sarcastically answering that. Yeah. He was addicted to drugs. He had all the problems. He couldn't stay stable. I was the one that was financially responsible. I was the one that could hold a job. And I was the one that had goals and ambitions. But that doesn't mean that you don't have your own faults. But at the time, that was part of my toxicity. Yeah. The way that I worded myself with him was completely inappropriate and toxic. Right. My ex used to tell my mom that I had a tongue that could sting and bring a man to his knees. Oh. And I learned very quickly when becoming a business owner how to hold my tongue. Because my life and my job depended on it. Yeah. And my business license depended on it. That taught me a lot.
I remember I dated an addict too. And I remember one time we got into a big fight. And I remember he turned to me and he was like, "You're so stuck on trying to fix my problems because you don't want to look in the mirror and look at your own." And I was like, right. Damn. I'll never forget when he said that. And I was like, up until that moment, I thought you were the problem here, not me. But I'm the problem.
Oh, Joe said similar things, but in more into you think you're imperfect.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I am. Compared
Yeah.
to you, I am. And that's such an awful way to think because how degrading is that
Yeah.
to say to somebody?
Uh-huh.
So I wasn't an angel by
And
any means.
was when you started dating other people that you started to see it more?
Oh, yeah. I had to
Yeah.
do some self reflecting like, why am I choosing this? What is it that I keep falling into these patterns of emotionally unstable individuals?
Yeah.
And at times they're losers. And so I am like, why am I trying to find validation for people that don't even fulfill themselves? And I had to take a step back and look at what is going on with me.
Yeah.
Did I figure it all out? 100% no.
Yeah.
But I knew that there was a problem.
So what'd you do?
My self-worth, realizing that I was still searching for something instead of accepting things that were natural to me and realizing that I'm better than hoping to be chosen. I guess it's just so hard to explain. I felt like I was better than what I was allowing myself to be and
Yes.
showing myself to be. Outside, I'm a confident person. I'm a business owner. I am becoming a homeowner. I have my degree. I have all these other things to show, but inside, there was still that issue in there.
Yeah.
And because of the choices I was making to heal, I wanted the toxicity with me and Joe to follow that pattern. And going through that period of time of me and him breaking up and still almost falling into those same patterns allowed me to step back and self-reflect and realize that I was better than that.
That's awesome. I like how you bring up, because I wanted to mention it too, on the list of what you have to offer. You're pretty well set. You have a strong head on your shoulders. You're a business owner. You're in the process of buying a home. All these things, you're stable and you have a lot to offer.
Yeah.
And yet you're choosing these relationships that are like, I don't want to say lesser, but almost like you see yourself as less than what you really are.
Yeah, there are relationships that lack value. I have a really wise friend in Hawaii that always would tell me, do you believe you're a woman of value?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes. And she said, then why don't you seek a man of value? If you are a woman of value, you should be seeking somebody of value to equal your value.
Yeah.
Don't short yourself.
Yeah.
And she was a lot of what helped with my healing process too, because
Yeah.
she was like this female Buddha that would put the craziest things into my mind.
And you obviously started believing it at some point, right?
100%. 100%. Yeah. I'm a woman of value and you have to match my value. And she's a full believer, no matter what you look like, no matter what your size is, no matter what your income is. If you treat yourself with value, you're going to receive value.
100%. I believe that too. If you don't build your self-worth and if you don't take the time to recognize everything that you have to offer in a relationship and that they should match that.
Right.
You don't build yourself up just so you can give it to someone else. You build yourself up so that you can meet someone that also has that built.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
I am a stickler for believing a couple doesn't become one to complete each other, but to remain two whole individuals who individuality strengthens and enhances their connection. Yeah. I'm a believer in remaining two souls growing together without losing ourselves.
Love it. And at some point, you were doing this and Joe was doing his own, correct?
Not at first. So I want to say like the first year, it was rough. I took a step back and I was pretty cold. And he was still in his, why didn't you answer? Where are you at? What are you doing? Who are you with? Era. That's where he was. And I had to keep reminding him, we're not married anymore. It's none of your business. I was pretty cold. And then he finally started getting the picture because he couldn't break through to me. And the calls got less and less. We went maybe 6 weeks sometimes without talking to each other. But it wasn't until maybe the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, that he had contacted me because he had joined an entrepreneur program and he had to do a project where he had to say if he was getting $20,000, he opened his own business, how would he run that business? So he called me and he asked me if I could help him with that. And I was like, yeah, that's easy. I can help you. I could give you all the tools. Yeah. And so he would call me here and there and was telling me about the credit that he was receiving for his self-help program and all the things that he was attending. But he sporadically told me about it. He wasn't just throwing it on me. And it went over my head because I wasn't really invested. I was like, oh, yeah, that's cool. Like, he's just trying to, like, brag, you know, like, whatever. Yeah. And then after he finished that program, which was, like, 2 courses of the program, he got into the college courses. And then, again, he called me and said, I need your advice. I have these classes. Some of them are electives. Some of them are the major classes I have to take. Is there any way that you can help? So I was like, okay, yeah, I can help you with that. And then I'm watching him. I got to experience him start and complete some of his business courses. And he would talk to me here and there about going to meet with the Native Americans and do some spiritual
Wow.
group meetings they had. And
Yeah.
so slowly he started talking a little bit different, and he got in touch with some elders that really guided him and started putting all his energy into learning about himself. And of course, he took anger management, parenting classes, and all of those too. And at first I was like, oh yeah, you took parenting classes. They all do that. That's cool. But it wasn't until he started doing the college courses and then the business courses and stuff like that, that I was like, wow, he's really doing a lot in here.
Sounds like he's starting to mature.
Yeah. His demeanor started to change. He started to become more respectful after he started doing these groups. When he called me, instead of demanding attention, he would apologize. Like if he called me, he would say, I'm sorry if I called you at a bad time, or when you're available later, or is there an available time that I can talk to you later that maybe you can give me some advice or help me with some of these classes. He started becoming more mindful and respectful when he called. Wasn't as controlling. He was becoming more considerate. That was probably like a year to 2 years after he started joining all of those little programs, and he was telling me about them. And his demeanor slowly changed.
These are some good points on changes. Wow. Did you start having feelings again?
I was intrigued.
Okay.
I always was cautious on manipulation because I have mixed feelings about manipulation sometimes with people because it can be abusive. A lot of the inmates that are incarcerated, manipulation is their only way of communication. Like their way of how they learn to survive is to manipulate, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a learned experience. It's a learned habit. So when I started to realize that he wasn't just speaking words and not just manipulating, he started to show how determined he was to achieve these accomplishments. They became a goal for him. He started to hyper-focus on accomplishing his programs and getting good grades. He was completely fixated on his school schedule and eventually getting his way to fire camp so he can reduce his time. Mm-hmm. And I started to see the dedication that he was putting into anything that was bettering himself. And then that's when my feelings started to change. It wasn't because he was begging me. It wasn't because he was pleading for me. It was because I was watching him improve himself. And I stayed quiet for a while, like 6 months. I was being supportive, but I wasn't like, oh, good for you, yay. You know, I just sat back and watched because I tested the waters. I didn't want it to be a show. And so we would spend hours on the phone organizing his class schedules on what he should take for the next semester, take a hard class, maybe 2 easy ones so he can level them out correctly and strategize. That's what really started drawing me back to him, was like he was really putting in that work.
And was there a moment where you officially got back together?
Yes. The moment we got back together was after I helped him fight to get to fire camp.
Yeah.
His counselor was giving him the runaround for a long time. Wasn't his favorite counselor, obviously. For over a year, he had little complaints about her. I wasn't helping him a whole lot. I would help him on basic things like schedules for his classes and stuff like that. But after a few comments that I heard the counselor made, I said, okay, because I know what I can do. So I stepped up and I really put in the force, and I helped to get him approved for fire camp. Mm-hmm. And then getting that good news together and putting in that fight together with him, mm-hmm. I said, I'm ready to come back around. So I wrote him another letter, but this time it was through the GL app, and I wrote it out and then I copy and pasted it and I sent it to him through text. And he called and he kind of cried. He says he couldn't believe it. I expressed my boundaries. I expressed my worries, and he was completely understanding and he listened to everything I had to say.
Forgiveness. How did that play a role?
Yeah, I did put a lot of thought into forgiveness. It didn't happen overnight. It came in layers like an onion that I had to peel off. And the forgiveness wasn't really for him. It was for me. I was scared. I was nervous. Like, what am I doing? Here you go again, Sheena. And I talked with my friend who loves Joe. And I learned for myself that I had to stop seeing Joe through the lens of all the pain that we'd gone through and start recognizing him as a man that he was trying to become. I forgave him, not because I thought everything was okay and everything is fine and everything's gone and washed away, but I was tired of carrying that weight and that pain and the anger of all the things that we went through. I knew that if I held on to that anger and that animosity, that it was going to keep me tied to a version of him that was no longer existing. that was diminishing. And that wasn't fair to him or me to hold on to something like that.
Agreed.
And I had to understand, like, if I was going to forgive him, that I had to let go of everything completely. It had been 2 years of me being on my own, talking to him as a co-parent, and him working on himself. And I had to recognize that if I continued bringing up or holding on to old wounds, you're not going to be able to rebuild yourself or rebuild the relationship. And then forgiveness is also something that plays a part on yourself. You can't use the past as a weapon.
Yeah.
You can't, quote unquote, win. And it also has to happen on both sides of the relationship. I had to forgive him, but he also had to forgive me.
Right.
I had to understand that he needs to forgive me too, for his own health. Yeah. And not just for that, but for the things that I've done, for walking away, for neglecting him in a sense, for protecting my own peace, for doing what I had to do back then, leaving him on the streets to recover. What might have felt like tough love for me might have felt like negligence for him. Yeah. And then once we both realized that we had to start letting go of the things that broke us, we knew that we could start creating something new and special and more real and genuine and peaceful.
So your relationship then versus now sounds like it's night and day.
Yeah. So back then, obviously our relationship was built off a foundation of trauma, childhood trauma, emotion. We loved really hard, but it was also super messy. We were both full of pride. We were both full of inner pain that we didn't know how to handle. And we both moved on reacting before thinking. We didn't really communicate. We didn't know how to communicate. We didn't respect each other in that aspect. And it was just constant survival mode. But now it's been different. It's calm. It's respectful. The intentions are good. We actually listen to each other. We take accountability on both of our actions. If we get mustered up or sizzling a little bit, we take accountability on how we're reacting to each other. And we realize it's not about controlling each other anymore.
Yeah.
But by no means are we perfect, because we do have arguments.
Yeah. I remember when I first got with my husband, and he was like, the lack of chaos was making him unstable almost. Like, it was like the chaos, that was his sign of what love was, if that makes sense.
Right. Then, 100%. I relate to him.
Yeah. So he's like, the calmness was an adjustment because it's boring almost.
Yeah.
Did you feel it?
There's no thrill. It's not getting the endorphins going. Yeah, 100%. Because Joe is actually the one that's more calm now. And I'm very emotional. And when I get worked up, he'll tell me, I'm just going to let you go because obviously the way we're talking. And I'm like, you're just going to hang up on me? And I'm the one that is like, no, we got to settle this right now. And he's at that point now. And I'm like, shit. Am I the problem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talk about it often because we don't fight. We've grown a lot too. And it's just funny because everybody else around us has all this drama and stuff. And we're just like, nah, we're good. When we have fights, they're big, but they're communicative and whatever, but they're big. But it's hard to learn that chaos is not love, I find. I guess.
Yeah. We recently had a small argument. It wasn't very big. We rarely fight anymore, but it was an argument. We started doing the talking over each other thing. And he's like, I don't know what you're thinking. And I said, well, I do not think that. I just wish you would have communicated with me. That's it. And it got like a little heated. And then the next morning, the first thing he said was, before we start talking, I would like to apologize for the way I reacted to you last night. And I was like, how did you react? Like, I completely forgot. And then he's like, the way that I reacted, you know, and I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
I forgot about it.
I love that.
Yeah. And it's something that I wish more girls can experience, because being in these groups with other women, I am seeing off the wall things that I don't think I could ever handle ever again in my life. Ever. Yeah. I just want to save every one of these women.
Which brings me to the question, what would you say to a woman who's stuck in that toxic still and doesn't see their way out?
I think I would tell her, first of all, trying to speak to somebody who's in that situation could be very difficult, because often there's defensiveness and they don't always want to hear that. But if they could hear me, I would let her know that she's so much stronger than she is and she deserves peace. You shouldn't have to feel like you're surviving or stuck in a relationship. Sometimes stepping away from the relationship is the best thing you can do. It lets you put yourself first, and it gives the other person the space to heal, even if it's not the way that you would anticipate it to be. If it's not the way that you would want them to heal, you're still giving them that opportunity to achieve that. And you don't have to stay with somebody just to prove your loyalty or love. If someone is treating you badly, you don't have to stay to prove that you love them, because that's not love, that's survival. And to try to get out, you just start small, peeling the layers off, set boundaries, lean on people who support matter. And getting out of those situations is not giving up. It's taking control of yourself and giving yourself worth and value, treating yourself the way that you want to be treated. You are your best own homegirl. Be your best own homegirl.
I love it. And when you were healing, you also recognized that maybe you and Joe weren't going to end up together.
Yeah, because I didn't see him putting in the effort to grow himself.
Yeah.
So through my healing process, I could have never fathomed him being the way he is now. And doing counseling and all that growth, I didn't think that I was going to get back with Joe. I thought that this was going to be me healing, and I'm going to go down a different journey. We're going to go our own separate ways.
It's nice that you were able to reconnect and that you were able to both do that healing. And
yeah,
equally important that you were doing it for yourself and not for him.
Yeah. I had to be selfish.
Yeah.
I had to put myself first. I had to stop worrying about what other people were going to think and what was going to upset him, and stop trying to consistently please him to make him happy and not feel bad. Like, I had to say, what is best for Sheena? What's best for Sheena's journey? And even if I made mistakes along the way, don't regret it, but I'm not proud of it. You know, right. It got us to where we're at.
Yeah. Do you think that it would have been possible for you guys to heal together, or do you think that you really needed that time separately?
Every situation is different, but 100%, I do not think that we would have been able to heal together. 100%, I do not believe. And again, everybody's situation is different, but for me and Joe personally, because the intensity was so high that our consciousness was jaded. Yeah. We were too jaded to see clearly. And there's no way that we could have seen past that together. We had talked to counselors, and as soon as that counseling stuff hung up, it was, why didn't you tell her this? Well, why didn't you tell her that? Why didn't you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It wasn't proper exercises because we were just too jaded and set in our own pride in our own head. There was no way that we could have healed together. No way. Yeah. We had to do a major self-reflecting and let a lot of things go.
Today, do you find it's a closer relationship? Do you find it's more than it's ever been?
Oh, yeah. First of all, it feels a lot more safe. It feels a lot more emotionally safe. I never felt 100% emotionally safe. I felt like I could look at him and he knows my thoughts and we can laugh about it. But with my internal emotions that I had going on, I wasn't safe because he had his own stuff going on. And I actually talked to him about this. It's a lot more calm. It's a lot more steady. It's a lot more intimate. It's a lot more respectful. He told me that he's always missed me. He's always missed me because, you know, I met him 23 years ago. Yeah. But today he misses me more than he ever has in his life.
Wow.
Because he misses me as a person, inside and out, who we are today. The intimacy, it's not based on physical intimacy or anything like that. It's like pure soul and emotion. For me, it's the little things that he does, like he listens to me more. He's way more supporting and understanding. It's feeling close to each other, even when we have really rough, stressful situations. It's just that closeness and that connection that we have together. Yeah. That's where we're at right now. Yeah.
I love that. And I love that you bring up safety. It's something that I feel people don't recognize until they feel it. But being safe in your relationship, I feel like it's really a man's job. I know that men need to feel safe in their relationship too, but a woman should feel safe with her man.
Yeah. And it's not always physical, but in today's world, especially in our culture where us women have loved ones that are incarcerated, the thought process of safety often tends to like, well, my man will protect me. He has my back, right?
Yeah.
But it's not about that because it's more internal. Yeah. You want to feel emotionally safe and be able to lean on that person to protect and guide you, and to naturally feel submissive to somebody knowing that they can protect you in that way. Yeah. My whole life, I have been extremely dominant because, yes, I was more financially stable and I had my head on my shoulder, but I wasn't emotionally safe. I had nobody there to lift off that burden and weight or just help carry that emotion with me. And if you can be there emotionally for me and make me feel safe and guarded, I will submit to you.
Yeah.
I don't care if I make more or you make more, but if I feel like I have that support, then yeah, it's natural for a man to want to protect and guide his woman. But it's not always about physical.
Yeah.
That sometimes brings a lot of anger and fear into a relationship.
I love it. I feel like you just ripped the words out of my brain, and you're really on point. And I feel like the first question, if you think that you're in a toxic place or you're not sure about your relationship, is your safety question. Like just what you said, the exact explanation that you just gave. I think that's such a telltale on where you are in your relationship, is how safe do you feel emotionally and
spiritually.
Yeah.
Yeah, with your partner. Yeah.
It's right there. I think that tells everything. Oh, I love it. Thank you. What do you hope people take away from this?
Love is not perfect. Growing is not always going to be a straight path. You're never going to have all the answers right on time. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of patience to get where you want to be in your relationship. And having the patience can turn into the messiest stories or into something real and lasting. You can survive the chaos. You can learn from it. You can create something better, but you don't have to deal with it. You have the choice. You don't have to put up with abuse. You don't have to deal with things that make you feel unsafe. But yeah, this is for anybody in general. Put yourself first.
What I love a lot about your story is, for me, in my journey, it was I had to heal on my own, and I didn't end up with anybody. And once I was healed and in a certain place, I feel like that's when I met Nick, and that's when I was able to have that relationship and exactly what I wanted. But I think it's cool that in your case, you've been through it with him. And even though you did everything that you were supposed to, in the end, you healed and you did everything, you guys still ended up together. And I think a lot of people fear that they might not end up with their person, and that's why they don't take the steps to heal.
They stay because they're scared of losing that person.
Yeah. When really you took that risk and it paid off for you. But I think we also need to recognize that it might not pay off for everyone. But it's...
Yeah. And like I said, I thought it wasn't going to.
Yeah. Which means you really gave in to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. Is there anything else that you feel like we've missed that you want to touch on before we go?
I would tell the old me that real love shouldn't feel like survival. It shouldn't keep you anxious or waiting to be chosen. Real love feels calm, safe, and steady, even when life isn't. It doesn't make you question your worth. It reminds you of your worth. I'd tell her that she doesn't have to earn love through pain or loyalty tests. The right love doesn't cost your peace. It protects it.
Wow. It's beautiful. I love it.
I did have a little note for Joe, too.
Oh, did you?
So if he hears this in the future.
Yes, please.
Joe, babe, I want you to know how proud I am of the man that you're becoming. I see your growth. I see your hard work and the way you're showing up differently every single day. I love that we've both healed, we both learned, and built something stronger together. You are and you will always be my family, my partner, and my whole heart. And I truly believe in us, in our future, and in the love we fought so hard to protect. Thank you for choosing to grow. Thank you so much for choosing you. And thank you for choosing us and never giving up or losing faith, even when it was hard. Aww. Love you, babe.
That's so sweet. What a beautiful way to end it. Thank you so much for taking so much time with me.
I think it's interesting how my story turned into helping other people, because I wasn't expecting that.
After the interview, do you understand why?
Yeah, I do.
Really.
Yeah, I do.